Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I'm seeing the usual welcomes and announcements in the chat. So thank you all for saying hello. Hello, hello. And thank you for all of you who attended the irrigation workshop that we hosted at Tree People. This was that in-person workshop, and we did it on Saturday. It was optional, so for those of you who for whatever reason couldn't make it, you were planning on making it but couldn't, or it's just not convenient for you to have gone based on geography and where you live, that's totally fine. It's not going to impact the your course or your certification, but to those that did attend, thank you very much for coming and chit-chatting with me in person and getting a little bit of a in-person kind of rundown of Tree People. And thank you to Jack Smith, who is not only part of this cohort, but who works as the nursery manager at Tree People and who participated in the kind of giving some more background and behind the scenes info about the Tree People operation over there. So I appreciate having his help as well. No problem to any of you who couldn't make it. All right. And the irrigation workshop was largely, I would say, reiterating things that we have already kind of covered in the course, but we did have a little bit of show and tell opportunity and did get to talk a little bit about kind of the full life cycle, I would say, of the native plant, because we got to also see the nursery operation over at Tree People, which was kind of nice. So we had a little bit more in-depth kind of conversation. And that's another great opportunity, if you can make it to an in-person workshop, is sometimes we get off on a little tangent, but it's a very relevant tangent that's kind of gives us more understanding about native plant horticulture. And so if you can attend that, absolutely, please do. If not, and you do have questions throughout this course, obviously this is the time to do it, is in the chat. You're welcome to email me, and then also depending on the course, like our last class, we'll probably be able to be a little bit more informal and kind of talk about other topics conceivably before you end this whole course. I want to make sure that you guys kind of get an understanding of the things you wanted to learn when you came in. So thank you to the last few people who are trickling in. Let's see. So jumping in to the homework review. So unlike the last classes, I did not create a cute little slideshow for you guys highlighting your work. Part of that was this seemed to be the hardest homework assignment for the group, and for good reason. And so I didn't get quite as many responses as usual, and some of them came at the last minute, so I wasn't able to really necessarily showcase anything, but I did want to talk about a couple that really stood out for me. So the homework was a little bit complicated in the sense that you had to calculate, you had to first figure out what your client's irrigation system was, which depending on your situation could have been a total kind of scavenger hunt / detective work issue. And so some people were not even able to figure it out. The other issue that sometimes comes up is you have an irrigation system, and then halfway through things start changing. The heads of sprinklers change, brands, or they're using two different kinds of systems entirely. And so there's some confusion there. Other people had a hard time finding the spec sheets, the manufacturer's spec sheet that would be specific to that particular system. They found a more general spec sheet that said the range of gallons per minute the sprinkler system uses, but not specifically what that exact model did. So that was a little bit confusing for some people. The two assignments I think that stuck out for me one was Emily's with Tree People. And the reason why it stuck out was because it was unconventional in that she assessed her client being such and such park, let's say like the National Park Service or whatever landowning agency owned a large parcel of land where Tree People is doing restoration tree planting. And so unlike a conventional kind of front yard, backyard or residential project, her irrigation system is a 250-gallon water truck that drives out to the site, and a hose, connects to that, and each staff member fills a bucket of water halfway, so 5-gallon bucket filled halfway, and goes to water the tree, and each tree will get 2 half buckets of water, which is 5 gallons of water, which is kind of what we've said is a good rule of thumb for a small, like a 1-gallon tree or plant. And so, and she kind of calculated how long it takes to do that, and figured out kind of an irrigation schedule based on that. And what I liked about that was that it customized this homework assignment to what is actually relevant to her particular line of work. And so I thought that was really creative. And she saw it in a way that she didn't go and find somebody who had, say, a sprinkler system. She used what she knows, and she used what her actual clients are. So I thought that was really great. The other one that was very impressive to me was Alexis's. And that one was impressive because he took the Westwood Greenway irrigation plan and did a lot of detective work to figure out exactly what the irrigation system was. The biggest challenge with that is it's a public land parcel that 2 city agencies are kind of have jurisdiction as far as the irrigation and some of that. So it has all these like layers of complication. But he figured out how long the irrigation is supposed to be, would be put on, suggested a cycle and soak kind of pulse irrigation program to get an adequate soaking, as well as mapped out a schedule for the year. So I was really impressed with that one, both because of the sheer size of it. It's not just, a small, 1,000 square foot front yard, but it had a lot of complexities with regards to both political complexities, and then also just the actual landscape itself is much more massive than some other projects. So I was very impressed with that one. And I wanted to use that as a segue. For those of you who have not heard of the Westwood Greenway, I wanted to give Charles an opportunity to unmute himself. Charles Miller is going to give a little bit of information about the Westwood Greenway and I guess an invitation for you guys to see it and learn more. So Charles, go take it away.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Catherine. Yeah, and I'm on the board along with Alexis. And on the 27th of February, I am doing a tour of the Greenway at 1 p.m. for sustainability advocates. It's really aimed at UCLA's sustainability program. That's going to be the kind of the core group, but it completely overlaps with a lot of the stuff we're discussing in terms of we'll be discussing, the plants there, what certain plants do, the plant, I'm certainly not an expert at Catherine's level, but we'll be able to walk through and see an urban native landscape in action, and it'll give you a lot of ideas if you're not aware of it. I'm putting in the chat room a link to an RSVP page that has parking info, the time, the address, all that jazz, how to get there. Everybody, this is not part of UCLA, just to be clear, Richard. This is on the Expo line at the Westwood stop. It makes it a couple miles south of UCLA. It is on Westwood Boulevard, though, adjacent to Westwood, between Westwood and Overland. And this is a project that grew out of an existing right-of-way that had been there for a long time, that was used for the Expo line when Metro put that in. And a lot of us advocates got together and really pushed for this to be native landscaping. And it was really only because of our advocacy that happened. They originally wanted to fill it up with palm trees and ginkgo biloba and a bunch of stuff along those lines. Anyway, don't want to take up too much of your time here, but click on the link if you're interested. please come. If you're, it's completely free. It'll probably take about an hour, I don't know. And we'll stay as long as anybody who has questions. And if we don't have answers, we'll try to find the answers for you. But it's a good opportunity to focus on a list of priorities as to why, as a sustainability advocate, not just a landscaper, urban landscaping that involves native plants is an important thing to have on our plate. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Charles. And yes, anybody please click the link and it'd be great to see you guys there. I'm going to try to make it myself. The other thing about the Westwood Greenway is that it's a really good model. Anytime you have large landowning government agencies or city agencies, the opportunity to create really big impacts is there. It's unfortunately also layered with 1,000 layers of politics and bureaucracy, and so those projects are sometimes very difficult to come to fruition. And so to have an example is really, really good, and hopefully it becomes a model for the way that Metro and other landowning agencies kind of utilize their space to be able to create intense, kind of habitat restorative, sustainable landscapes rather than the conventional kind of knee-jerk reaction of, the usual suspects as far as conventional landscaping. So it'd be great to see you guys there. All right, cool. We already got a sign up. Hey. All right, great. Okay, so we're going to move on. So just a little bit of information about today's class. I'll be teaching about the first hour. We're going to do a little bit of a recapping of some of the information from the last class as far as irrigation and how the irrigation strategies might change year to year. We're going to cover a bit about some of the water regulations and ordinances and such, so that you're aware of them, and also some cool resources as well for you. And then at the halfway mark, I'm going to pass it off to Cassie. Hold on one second. I'm going to see if she's here.
Hi, Catherine, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Cassie Ann. Cassie Ann is from LADWP, and so she's going to kick it off at the halfway mark at halftime show. She's going to take over. We'll do a little bit of a break, and then she'll come back and give an overview of all the LADWP rebate information, and then we'll just explain the very brief kind of simple homework assignment for today, and then we'll call it a day after that. All right. There's a question in the chat, Charles, if it's okay to share that invitation to others who might be interested.
Absolutely. It says on the RSV page, bring anybody you want. Any guests are welcome. I mean, even kids are fine too, though this is absolutely not going to be aimed at kids. I mean, but anybody is welcome to come. Absolutely. We'd like to get them RSVP'd just so we might send a follow-up survey to say, did you, hate this, whatever kind of a thing. But, something like that. But yeah, absolutely. Bring anyone you want.
Cool. All right, great. Okay, so irrigation objectives. Oh, I kind of explained it already. Let's just start. Changing irrigation as a garden matures, an annual perspective. So we talked a lot about establishment irrigation and what that means, that deep water, infrequently done. You do it more frequently in the beginning, and then over time you do it less and less, but each time is a really deep soak. Then in the next few years, then we're going to start on a maintenance schedule of watering. That's a different kind of a different strategy. And so here we're talking about year one, again, establishment watering. Let's see. I don't like to just read at you, so I'm gonna just emphasize. So the point of what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the roots that have normally been contained in this potted plant environment in the nursery that's got very regular irrigation, very normal, stable conditions, and you're trying to train it out of being a little pampered potted plant and train it to become a really robust, self-sustaining plant that is accustomed to the kind of the new climate that you're putting it in. So number one, that it requires you to plant
planted the right plant in the right place. So remember that factor. No amount of training will make a juncus want to live at the top of a decomposed granite south-facing hillside. So, make sure you've picked the right plant for the right place. But when you have picked the right plant for the right place, the way that you irrigate for that first year makes all the difference. So deep watering. When you first plant it, you can do 10 gallons, you can do 30 gallons, frankly. The very first time you plant, you can never really overwater that first day. After that, 3 to 5 gallons per 1 gallon plant is kind of a good rule of thumb. You can go a little deeper than that too. You can do, pretty heavy, but you want to wait for the top 3 inches or so to have a chance to dry out before you water again. So what you're doing every time you allow for that dry down period is you're telling that plant superficial surface irrigation is not reliable. Look, it's wet, but now it dried up. It's wet, now it dried up. The reliable irrigation is that deep irrigation, the deep water that settles in the soil really low, and that doesn't evaporate as quickly. So if you see trees that are grown in lawns, trees that are grown in turf grass, often are the ones that end up falling over in situations of high winds, or they, frankly, sometimes their roots rot out from excessive superficial irrigation. But in high wind situations, the roots are all on the surface. Why? Because a tree that's supposed to be really deeply rooted and deeply anchored is being watered like grass that is in the top 3 inches of the soil. So when you water frequently and superficially, it encourages superficial surface roots that have a higher opportunity to dry out or get damaged in any kind of stressful situation, versus deep and less frequent irrigation, which encourages that type of deep anchoring root growth, which will make a really stable plant and one that can withstand temporary periods of drought, lack of water, high heat, because the roots are so deep, they're staying cooler and they're staying moister than anything else. So that's what you're doing in that first year. It's that training program. So this is in year 2. So in year 2, your plant is technically considered, I just dropped my phone somewhere, I can't retrieve it. Anyway, that's fine. In year 2, your plant is technically considered established. So in year 2, the best thing to think about is, how do I make this year, this is really 2 and all years after, how do I make this an ideal wet Mediterranean winter climate? You have to artificially irrigate to make up for a lack of winter and spring rains. If we have a lack of winter and spring rains, if we have like an El Nino year, we certainly don't have to irrigate at all. Maybe like from December through April, you don't do anything. But if we have this kind of a year, it would be good to mimic a winter storm, a nice deep soak about once a month through about April. And then by the second summer, you're really going to be restricting your irrigation, and it just depends on what plants you have. So it's, you remember where it said like you can water 0 inches to like 1.5 inches per rain event in a summer. You have to know the plants that you have. I tend to go on the lower end of the inches. I don't do a deep soak personally in the middle of the summer, but if you have plants that tolerate that, a deep soak can be helpful. But I'd rather do lighter applications every 3 weeks rather than deep soak every 3 weeks. And if you have really sensitive plants like woolly blue corals or anything like that, you may consider 0 summer irrigation. So for year 3, infrequent deep watering during the winter is, again, winter and spring is
where you do your deep watering, and kind of like a lighter irrigation through the summer. Same strategy, 4 years and beyond. Your irrigation is not just going to be about timing, it's also going to be about the practical matters of, hey, your sprinkler broke, you have to fix it. That's something you're going to have to pay attention to throughout the years. And you want to make sure that you kind of are adjusting this schedule. Usually it's like a quarterly adjustment of a schedule. So you want to think about like seasonally how you change it. So make sure you're always paying attention to the weather, that year's rainfall. It doesn't have to be super technical, just, you know, be aware that when it's a, you know, really wet winter, you can turn off any kind of irrigation. If we have not a wet winter, then you're going to want to make up for that. But focus that deeper watering during the time of the year that the plants are accustomed to receiving it, which is the winter and spring, less so in the hot summer. And if you add plants to a mature garden, so your plants, say you have 80% of them are established, maybe they're in year 4, and you're putting baby plants intermixed with that, don't water the whole garden for those 4 new plants you planted. You will have to go in and hand water or spot water those particular plants. So you don't want to overwater the rest of them just to support the babies. You just want to specifically follow up and give extra water to the young plants. All right. All right, so as far as smart controllers, so inefficiencies in irrigation methods lead to a whole lot of water waste. So you can often see, unfortunately, with some of the older irrigation systems and automatic timers that people use, you will go out, and it's something that frustrates me more than anything. It'll be raining and somebody's sprinkler systems are still on. Or it rained for 2 days and the next day somebody turned, you know, their sprinkler system went on, because they're used to it being on this automatic timer and not thinking about it. And the actual system or program that they're using is not sensitive enough, it's not smart enough to know that the ground is super soaking wet. And it doesn't have a connection to, say, like the nearest weather station to know that this is not an appropriate time to irrigate. So smart controllers are higher tech, much more savvy kind of irrigation controllers that can help avoid some of that error that keeps happening that leads to so much water waste. So the benefit of that is that obviously they're you know, using a lot more data, and there's a lot less that you have to do as far as you know, turning it off when it's raining. Even if you're on vacation and it's raining, it won't, you know, run. And so so the benefits, it could save you water. It gives you remote access wherever you are. So like I said, you could be in, you know, another city or nowhere near your garden, and it can give you remote access from your phone. No irrigation when it's actively raining. More customers might take more interest in them because these smart home devices are becoming more and more popular and more accessible. Many cities, states, and water districts actually require them. So if you have any irrigation system, you have to set up a smart irrigation kind of controller. And more features are coming, which could allow you to know exactly how much water you're using, which is cool to know, like, hey, I use such and such gallons of water. And which will also tip you off if something goes wrong, there's a leaky pipe or a broken pipe or something like that, you can catch it much easier. So one of the, you know, some of the drawbacks, however, not everybody, whether your homeowners or you yourself or your landscape crew, they might not be savvy as far as smartphone apps are concerned. Some people are a little bit, I'm a little bit like that. I tend not to have a million apps on my phone if I could avoid it. So some people might not, you know, gravitate towards that. You may have to run the entire system from your phone, where there is not an option for a manual operation. And so that's something that can be a challenge. And you might have to explain that to homeowners. If you've changed the schedule, if you've done something, you know, and you have that control and they don't have that control conceivably. So it's about figuring out kind of like who gets to kind of dictate the schedule and run the program. Timers and controllers can require much more upfront programming that makes it a little bit more complicated. Again, upfront, once it's set up, it's usually more you know, operating on its own, but sometimes the setup can be really complicated for some people.
There may be limitations in certain field applications where a smart controller can't be programmed to your needs. That's true of any controller. There might be scenarios where, you know, there's no way to program it based on the needs of that particular situation. So that's, like I said, that's for any program. The ability to do things manually or to, you know, turn something off and to operate something manually is pretty useful fallback. And if a smart controller doesn't allow for that in any way, that could be problematic. And you may need access to the internet, wireless, cloud, etc., which depending on where you are, may be easy, maybe not. So there are some, you know, obviously pros and cons to this controllers. Just gonna check the chat real quick. All right. So common problems with irrigation. Overwatering. Overwatering is one of the first mistakes made by people who encounter native plants in the garden for the first time. Overwatering is a problem for people who have not yet deprogrammed from the kind of lawn and conventional garden type of horticulture practice. So that's something overwatering can be a little bit misleading too, because sometimes it's too frequent a watering is overwatering. Even if it's like too shallow and not deep enough, it could be considered overwatering because you're watering too frequently. Even if the amount of water you use is the same as somebody else who's doing it correctly, you're overwatering based on how frequent it is. So you want to water with a lot of water, but less often. So, and then underwatering. So this is a little bit tricky as well. Some people overwater because they're worried about underwatering and drought. And sometimes the signs that for a plant who's dying from underwatering are similar to the signs of a plant that's dying from overwatering. So there can be a lot of confusion about whether the plant is being over or underwatered. So the difference between drought, legitimate drought, and just summer dry, natural summer dry scenario is that drought is a prolonged period of a lack of natural rainfall, breaking the usual pattern. So if we have a certain number of inches that we're generally expect year to year, and year after year we're getting below that, that's considered drought. Summer dryness is the norm for California. So the idea is that we would have a certain number of inches in the winter and the spring, and then summer's dry every year. Occasionally we get a little summer shower, but they're outliers and they're not usually, you know, really a lot. So summer's supposed to be dry. Your plants are supposed to cope with that dryness through various strategies, whether they just kind of don't grow, they stay kind of put for the summer. Some of them turn semi-deciduous or summer dormant. Some of them, their leaves will shrivel up because that's how they conserve moisture, by not pumping water into their leaves. So they have various adaptations and strategies for dealing with that. But no summer rainfall is totally fine and normal. No summer rainfall compounded with years of not enough winter and spring rain, that's when you end up with plants that get perpetually underwatered. So it's your job to elevate the winter and spring rain to normal levels so that they can get through the summer. Even if you were to apply no water, they can get through the summer a little bit easier. So native plants are adapted to this summer dry pattern. They're not suffering, but they could look crispy. They could look a little bit not so happy. And don't forget when I mentioned a lot of the overwatering problem that occurs that kills Ceanothus, kills Manzanitas, kills some of the other plants is because of that normal summer slough period, where from spring to summer, they start dropping some of their fatter winter leaves and conserving their smaller, keeping their smaller leaves on them. So a lot of people see that yellowing of those big leaves, dropping of those leaves and go, oh, my plant is dying. And then they pump it full of water and then they kill the plant from overwatering. So certain amount of that is totally normal. So don't be, tempted to overwater, but also be proactive. If we had a really dry summer, really dry winter and a really dry spring, that was the time to give more water. So think ahead, think right now about your garden how it's going to cope through summer, think about how you can help it now. So that's what's really, really kind of important and often missing, is you think about like, how am I going to get the plants through summer during summertime? Don't think about it then. Think about it in February. Think about it in March. Think about it in April. Maybe a little in May, and then kind of write it out in the summer. All right. Okay, so some water use regulations. Alrighty. Wait a minute. Oh, yes, okay. There's a series of regulations and resources help to reduce potable water use throughout the state. They rely on certain types of plant data. WUCLs is one, and CIMIS is another. And then there's a process for creating a water budget, WILO and MAWA, which is super fun. I love acronyms. So WUCLs is used often by landscape architects and others who are dealing with plants, and they classify plants based on their water needs. And so they're classified as high, moderate, low, or very low. And to give you examples of what high, moderate, low, and very low are on the right, you can see that our drought tolerant native plants many of them go in the very low category. And the and it's based on kind of this evapotranspiration rate that we'll get into here, and how little evapotranspiration they have in comparison to the most water thirsty plants. So like very low is like less than 10, I guess almost like % of that. So CIMIS, California Irrigation Management Information System, is, so I keep having to move my my little Zoom screen with all the faces away from the writing so I can read. So it was developed in 1982, and it's designed to assist irrigators in managing water resources more efficiently. So what CIMIS is it's kind of a program that set up weather stations all across the state that measures evapotranspiration and creates, to give you an example of what evapotranspiration is. Evaporation, you guys are aware, is, you know, obviously water that turns into gaseous form, that's evaporation, usually from the soil, from some, you know, surface inert substance. Transpiration is the plant's version. It's a biological version of that same thing, where the plants release water from their leaves, and it basically evaporates from the plant, turns into gaseous form, etc. So that's the way that water that's either in the soil or in a plant turns gaseous. So that's a process that is, you know, you lose water from an environment in that way. And so these CIMIS weather stations are set up with a reference crop. And the reference crop is usually a cool season turf grass, something that's like the highest water needy plant. And they have this reference crop that's put there, and they measure how much evapotranspiration there is from, you know, the soil and that reference crop. And that's their high kind of limit. And so when we talk about this WUCLs chart, like 90% of that highest level would be, you know, a high water needing plant that's kind of represented by turf grass. And these others are, you know, significantly less compared to that reference crop. So they're comparing it to that most water needy reference crop. So they have over 145 automated weather stations in California. There are evapotranspiration graphs available for every part of the state. They're based on these zones. And there are actual weather stations that you could look up. You can look up your weather station that's closest to you. They don't have one, you know, in every city, but you can find one that's close-ish to you, and you can check the yearly evapotranspiration rates for that area. So this will give you an example. These are all the various zones. So for Theodore Payne, I believe they're zone 14, because I think that's the one that they point out. So at the end of the year, 57 inches of basically water is lost every year, just from evapotranspiration, just from that process alone. So you could click on these links. These links are in your book. Can you see this for anybody who has a face on the screen? Either nod or shake your head if you see the CIMIS website. No, I'm saying no. You're, oh, somebody said yes, and somebody else said no. So, or put it in the chat. Okay, yep, it's okay. So people are seeing it. So we're on the CIMIS website. Okay, so I'm getting a few yes. All right. Okay, so to look for the report, let's say I want.
I'm
Go
not
ahead.
sure. Sorry, I'm just not sure if when people say they're seeing the website, they mean they see the link
Oh,
to the
so
website.
are you not seeing the link?
Well, I think people see the link, but they're not seeing you clicking around on the website. I don't, is that?
That makes
All
sense.
I have is a map.
All I have is a map.
Okay,
Shows
you
just
guys
the
are still
map.
seeing the map. I see a link in a map of Cali. Okay. Okay, so in that case, then let me stop and start the share again. Let me see if I can get you to the page that I was actually at. How about this? Okay, can you see this? And it says CIMIS in the top right.
Yeah, we got it now.
Okay, great. All right, so this is their, you know, this is the data section. Let's go to the stations section. So stations. And I'm going to click on county just so that it actually sorts it by county. We're obviously not in any of these counties. So let's go to page. All right, here. Okay, so I'm going to say, okay, Hollywood Hills is inactive. Pomona, Claremont, Santa Monica. Let's go down. Let's see if there's another one. Palmdale, West Hills, North Hollywood. Let's say North Hollywood for me. 2223 is the station that I want to look at. Say that's the closest to me. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know. So now I'm going to click on data. And then I want a monthly report. Here's my monthly report. And I'm going to go to 223. I think that was the number. There it is. North Hollywood, run report. And now you're going to get all the data for the year 2021, and then this just 1 month in 2022, but all the 2021 monthly total evapotranspiration rates in inches. Also gives you the precipitation in inches. Other things like solar radiation and air temperature and all that, because it's a full weather station. It's not just, you know, doing one thing, but the evapotranspiration is most relevant to irrigation. And so at the end of the year, for total 51.24 inches of evapotranspiration. That's how much like kind of water loss that you had. And so that's kind of relevant data. So evapotranspiration is ETO, the O is small, just to be confusing. And so that's how you can look up your closest weather station. So again, you can look up the weather stations by clicking stations. You can print out a report by going to data. There's an hourly report. You can literally look hour to hour, or daily or monthly. And monthly is a little more relevant because you want the kind of the whole year's worth of data. And so that's how you do that. And that might be something you might want to do. All right, so back to the PowerPoint. So that was that link. So now you're seeing me advance to Welo. Can you guys see Welo? I'm assuming you can. All right. So WELO is Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. This is an actual law This is an ordinance. You are required for any new landscape construction exceeding 2,500 square feet, done, professionally, or any new landscapes, like if a new house is built and they're, part of that landscape involves doing this water efficient landscape ordinance process, where you have to set kind of a maximum water allowance for that house, and you have to establish all sorts of water waste prevention systems, and also use plants on the WUCL's kind of list that are very low or very low in water, and have a plan drawn out and get it approved, and it's part of the permitting process. So if you are going to be doing these landscapes, larger landscapes, or brand new landscapes, and you're the ones starting it, this is something that's going to be relevant to you. If you're not, if you're out in Paramount Ranch and planting trees for tree people, this might not be relevant to you. So just take pieces of whatever we're talking about, take it for what makes sense for your particular career path. But there are also various rebates pertaining to landscape irrigation equipment that will help with this water waste prevention kind of strategy. So the MAWA is the maximum applied water allowance. So this is where we get to do a little bit of math, if you like math. And this is part of the WELO ordinance, and it establishes that upper limit for water use. And so you have to calculate this as part of the WELO kind of permitting process. And again, WELO is for new construction and renovations that are professionally installed, larger than 2,500 square feet, if they require a building or landscape permit, plan check, and design review. So it's all kind of has to be reviewed before it's installed. And so again, LADWP offers various rebates pertaining to landscape irrigation equipment that would be in this kind of relevant to a new landscape. So to calculate the MAWA, which is the maximum allowed water allowance, it seems really complicated. It's actually very simple. You will take the yearly evapotranspiration rate for the specific geographic area. So those CEMIS stations, for instance, you could conceivably find the closest one to this particular landscape that you might be installing. You're going to take that evapotranspiration rate, you're going to multiply that by 0.62. That's a conversion. It's going to be a constant. That's just the number it is. You don't ever have to change that. It converts it from inches a year to gallons a year. So the evapotranspiration, which is calculated in inches per year, times 0.62, that takes it to gallons per year. Multiply that by an ET adjustment factor. Again, this is not something you have to create. It just says 0.55 if it's a residential project, or 0.45 for non-residential projects. So if it's residential, then you're going to put 0.55 in lieu of this ETAF. And then multiply that by the landscape area. So that's just square footage. So for example, in Sun Valley, the ETO, the evapotranspiration rate, is 57 inches per year. It's say it's a residential project, and the landscape area is 3,000 square feet. What would that math problem look like? It would be 57 times 0.62 times this 0.55 times 3,000. And then the answer you get at the bottom is 58,311 gallons. That is your maximum allowed water allowance. So that is the most you can spend of water on your landscape in a year, is basically what that means. And so the great thing is that that's actually a lot of water. And so you will find with a drought tolerant native garden that you are far below that number, which is kind of cool. But that's how you calculate it. All of this information is in your book if you want to do that. It's relatively straightforward, and if you are good at this process and you're working with a client, you can take this on as like an additional service that you're offering and not have your client have to think about it. So it's good to kind of know it. So we already did this, but you can look up your nearest weather station. And again, this link is in your handbook. So again, opportunities for professional consulting or extras. Irrigation controller replacement. If you want to replace the current irrigation controller and change it maybe into the more up-to-date smart controllers, you can do that. That could be a particular service that you offer. You will obviously charge for the equipment, the labor, the programming, maybe a service fee, subscription service for ongoing monitoring. If you're going to be the one doing that ongoing monitoring, if you say, I will take care of all of this for you and you just leave it in my hands, make sure that you have kind of taken into account all the time that you will be spending on it and making sure that you're charging for that service. Sprinkler rebate work, they have a rebate for conversion to new rotator heads on irrigation systems. So if you have a high flow sprinkler system and you want to change it to a low flow sprinkler system, you can get a particular rebate for that. And what's really kind of cool is depending on the model and make, it's really easy to convert high volume to low volume sprinkler heads. It's something that I am not personally super technically savvy with irrigation. And I remember when I was working at Theodore Payne, we converted all the sprinkler heads to MP rotators. And it was something that, you know, in an hour with like a 1 hour workshop that just showed how to do it on one or two, then I was able to do it on the whole system of, you know, the entire sales yard. So it's quite simple to do, and it's something that will ultimately save water and money down the line. So rain garden grading. The rain garden is, remember, a feature. You either have to have a rain garden or some other kind of water catchment, whether it's a rain barrel or something like that. But you have to have something of that nature for the DWP lawn replacement rebate. But even if you're not going with the lawn replacement rebate, this is such a valuable kind of stormwater management strategy for landscapes that I highly recommend that you do them wherever you can and everywhere you can. And so this does require a certain amount of specialized expertise. If you're doing it in your own yard and you want to kind of just guess, you can certainly guess. You know, I think it should be this wide and this deep, and we'll see. And after the rain, if it overflows, I'll make it deeper, or, you know, but if you're going to be doing it, you want to do one and done, and you want to make sure it's really, really well done. You can calculate exactly how much rainfall, how many gallons are being shed off of a roof based on the size of the roof, and then also calculate the volume that the particular swale that you created can capture with other additional formulas, just the way we did over here with this really great formula. There's a specific formula for capturing, figuring out how much water is being shed off of a roof. And so what I want to point out to you is in your handbook, in your student handbook, there's a section here that says, what is a rain basin? Constructing and maintaining a rain basin. So this, I believe, was authored by Claire, who also teaches this course. And she has this whole step-to-step guide about installing a rain basin, and also those formulas for figuring out exactly how many gallons shed off a roof. So that's something that's really handy to know, both when constructing the basin itself, but also when figuring out what size rain barrel you're going to want ultimately for the property, or how many rain barrels you might have to daisy chain together, depending on how much flow is coming off of the roof. And so if you will be maybe you will be surprised, but I'm always totally flabbergasted how much water comes off of a rooftop. And so you will, I think, be very surprised at how high a number you get when you do that formula. And again, it's in writing here. I'll say it verbally, not that you're going to memorize it for that, but the catchment area is your rooftop. So the area, square footage, times multiplied by the rainfall in inches, multiplied by 0.623 equals maximum runoff. So that maximum runoff you have from the roof. So that's just, pretty straightforward, pretty simple, as long as you know the square footage of your roof, and you can say, hey, in a 2 inches of rain, which is quite a lot, in 2 inches of rain, we're going to get such and such number of gallons coming off of this roof. That way you also know, you can do that on every impermeable surface. So you can say, you can do that off a sidewalk. We know that, the sidewalk is this much square footage, so this much water is being shed off of the sidewalk. This much water is being shed off the patio. This much water is being shed off of fill in the blank impermeable surface. And so if you have areas for the water to go during that time, then you have an opportunity to really capture and sink and percolate and infiltrate all that water and benefit the plants in the garden, help recharge the groundwater, and you're really kind of just maximizing the opportunity for water savings. So I highly recommend it, and that you pay special attention to that particular kind of handout. All right, and then the WELO and MAWA calculations and implementation. So if you become really good at those, calculating those numbers and assisting with that kind of permitting process, that could be put onto you as a service that you charge for your client. So the person might be very, very relieved, and will likely be very, very relieved to not have to do that whole permitting process if you take it on for them. So the design, the plant choices, the maximum, water allowance, and all of that would be something that you provide. And so your homework is very simple, and it's going to follow the Cassie Ann's presentation. And so what it is you're going to determine which of the LADWP rebates that you're going to learn all about a particular client qualifies for and would benefit from. So as you listen to Cassie Ann, think about your clients, even if it's like your mom's house, your house. Think about all of the opportunities for getting these rebates, whether it's for the change of sprinkler heads, maybe it's for the lawn turf replacement, or what have you. So jot some notes down, because you can kind of finish your homework today as she's speaking. Or obviously you can do it before the next class, and just send me a quick email to wildergardens@gmail.com. Say, my client would qualify for this and this and this and this. I'd be curious to see how many of them are repeats, how many of the students in this class would find similar ones that are applicable. So if some are easier than others, might be interesting to know. All right, so let's see what time it is. Actually, I can't see what time it is because my phone fell really far away from me. All right. So what I think we should do is take a brief break, and then I wonder, Alice-Ann, I am still on my screen share, and Cassie Ann, are we having Cassie Ann and Alice-Ann? That's awesome. Now I want an Ann after my name. I have the presentation, but at the same time, Cassie Ann, do you have a copy of the presentation where you could share your screen?
I do, whichever way is easier. I do. I can
I'll
share
just
it.
stop my share.
Okay, and yeah, I have it up. So let me actually.
Okay, cool.
Video.
And I think we have, if you don't mind, let's take a 5-minute break so that it'll be exactly at 7. And then you can start. How does that sound, Cassie Ann?
That sounds great. Thanks.
All right, cool. All right, so everybody, if you want to take a 5-minute breather, go get a coffee or a tea or something, and then we'll be back at 7 to see Cassie Ann's presentation.
Just let me know when I should start. I don't know what time we left for break or not.
I think you're good to start at any point, Cassian. I think I said till
Okay.
7, and so we're a few minutes after 7.
Perfect. And you can see my screen, right? Everything looks good?
I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, great. Let's get started with my presentation. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. My name is Cassian Rego. As Catherine said, I'm a water conservation specialist in the water conservation group at LADWP, and I'll be going over the water conservation outdoor landscaping rebates that you as yourself as a customer or your clients can participate in. Okay, so for the purpose of the water conservation rebates, we define residential as a single family dwelling or multifamily dwellings of 1 to 4 units. And we define commercial as commercial, industrial, institutional, and multifamily units, 5 dwellings or more. So this comes in handy sometimes for, especially for the multifamily, how many units kind of defines which residential or commercial rebate they'll be able to apply for. Okay. And so for our residential landscape rebates, I'll be going over our weather-based irrigation controller rebate, our soil moisture sensor, hose bib irrigation controller, our flow monitoring leak detection device rebate, rotating nozzles, rain barrel or cistern rebate, and our turf replacement program. Okay, so for the first one, we have the weather-based irrigation controller. And as it was mentioned earlier in your class, these are great, especially if they're upgrading from the old manual ones. These weather-based controllers, change with the changing weather. And a qualifying controller for less than 1 acre is up to $200. Greater than or equal to an acre is the rebate is $35 per station. So definitely a great rebate. And again, a lot of these rebates will say qualifying controller because we do have lists of qualifying models and model numbers for a lot of our rebates. So that's definitely something that you're going to want to take into consideration for yourself or your client when purchasing not just the weather-based irrigation controller, but most of our other rebates as well. We do have the soil moisture sensor rebate. This one must include a sensor and a calibrator and an irrigation controller to qualify. So the rebate for less than 1 acre is up to $200. And again, greater than or equal to 1 acre, the rebate is $35 per station. I'm just letting you know, it's either a weather-based irrigation controller or a soil moisture sensor rebate. It's one or the other, you can't get both for your clients. So if you qualify for the weather, or if they're purchasing the weather-based irrigation controller, they wouldn't qualify for the soil moisture sensor rebate. We do suggest making the most out of these rebates because as you can see, it's up to $200. And if since you guys are contractors, landscapers, you're able maybe to buy by wholesale or get at a lower price. So definitely take advantage of the whole entire rebate if you can. So up to $200 for these rebates. We do have our hose bib irrigation controller rebate. And this qualifying controller rebate is up to $35. And these kind of work the similar way to the weather-based irrigation controller, but it connects to the faucet and the hose. So sometimes if they don't have in-ground irrigation, they might just be using the hose, or it might just supplement their irrigation system. And so, if it rains, it turns it off or it reduces the water. So this one, again, is great for water conservation and controls the faucet. So up to $35 for the hose bib irrigation controller. We do have our flow monitoring and leak detection device rebate. This is a pretty new rebate. I would say the last few months that this one came out. As was mentioned before, there's a lot of new technology and devices out there. And so this one's one of the newest ones. And it's becoming very popular because people want to be able to detect leaks in their home and watch how much water consumption they use, whether it be by the minute, by the day, by the week, by the month. These devices, depending on the model, you're able to do that. So this one is great. Again, you do need to have Wi-Fi at the installation location and a smart device, such as a smartphone or a tablet. So definitely keep that in mind when you're promoting this program. A lot of people are interested in it, but again, due to having a smartphone or having to download an app, it can get pretty technologically intense. So definitely do your research on the type of model. The rebate, I just want to mention, it will only be paid to devices installed on customer property and not on the utility meter. So right now out there on the market, there are two different types. One that goes directly on the meter and others that go on customers' property, depending on where they want it to be installed. And LEDWP will only rebate for the devices that are installed on customers' property. So please be sure to, again, look at those qualifying lists, do your research on the type of model, what kind of features it has, and what your customer would like to see. And these rebates are up to $150 for a qualifying rebate for the flow monitoring leak detection device. Okay, so we do have the rotating nozzles rebate. This one's up to $6 per nozzle and a minimum of 30 nozzles to qualify for the rebate. And we also do have our rain barrel or cistern rebate. The rain barrel, it's a minimum of 50 gallons and it's up to $50 per barrel. And you can get 2 per rebate. Or you can get a cistern rebate. So minimum 200 gallons, and we have different rebate prices. So 200 to 500 gallons, you can get $300. 501 to 999 gallons, you can get $400. And 1,000 gallons and up to $500. And you can only get 1 if you're getting a cistern rebate. Just letting you know, for our rain barrel or cistern rebate, it's either or. You can't get both a rain barrel and a cistern. So just two rain barrels, excuse me, because you can get 2, or you can get a cistern. Okay, so commercial landscape rebates. We'll go over our weather-based irrigation controller, our soil moisture sensor, rotating nozzles, our large rotary nozzle retrofit, in-stem flow regulator, and our turf replacement program. Okay, so as mentioned before, the weather-based irrigation controller or central computer irrigation controller, we rebate $50 per station. And our soil moisture sensor, which again must include a sensor and a calibrator and an irrigation controller, and that's up to $50 per station. For our commercial customers, we do have the rotating nozzles as well. So this rebate is up to $6 per nozzle. Again, a minimum of 30 nozzles to qualify for this rebate. We do also have the large rotary nozzle retrofit rebate. So this one would retrofit their existing sprinklers, replacing the standard plastic nozzles with more durable metal nozzles, so they last longer. So this is up to $13 per head with the 8-head minimum. And as I mentioned before, the in-stem flow regulators, and these are great. They control the water directly where it comes out at the sprinkler head. And these are up to $2 per device, a 25 device minimum and no maximum for this in-stem flow regulator rebate. And in the green right on your screen, just wanted to let you know that commercial device rebates do require a reservation before you're purchasing. So if you're helping out your client, commercial rebates are a little different than the residential rebates. Residential rebates, you can purchase your product, submit all your documentation like your receipt and your DWP bill, and get a rebate your check later. For commercial, it's a little different. So you do have to kind of pre-apply and get a reservation. Right here, you can see the website, socalwatersmart.com, and that's the website that has all the information. I'm moving to, sorry. And where to go to apply. And so for these commercial rebates, you do have to reserve the funds. And once you get your reservation, you have 60 days to purchase and install and go back onto your application to process your application, upload your documents in order to get to rebate. So again, a little bit different, but just make sure that you do reserve your funds before you purchase your devices for commercial. Okay, so let's move on to the residential turf removal rebate program. It's a very popular program, but we still need more participation. So in partnership with MWD or Metropolitan Water District, we do pay $3 per square foot of grass removed and converted to drought tolerant landscaping. It is $3 per square foot. It's a 5,000 square feet maximum. So that's up to a $15,000 rebate that a customer can receive. One important thing, which we'll go over a little bit later, you do need pre-approval, even for the residential. So residential and commercial turf replacement program applications, you do need pre-approval. Your project does need to be pre-approved with your photos and everything uploaded into your application. And we do have the commercial turf removal rebate program. We do again pay $3 per square foot for 250 square feet to 50,000 square feet. And after that, it's $1 per square foot for 50,001 square feet to up to 7 acres maximum. And again, pre-approval, that's very important for this program. Pre-approval is required. All right, so I'm going to go over some of the terms and conditions for the turf replacement program, just because it's very important that all of these requirements are met so that your client can get the most maximum rebate and qualify for the rebate. We don't like to deny just because they missed something or they didn't get it right. When the customer and you yourself as a landscaper contractor is knowledgeable about the program, it really helps facilitate it and make it go smoothly and correctly so that they can get the rebate. So the first one is all turf must be removed in the project area and covered with a weed barrier material. We do preferably organic materials such as cardboard or paper, but it's preferred but not required, but we do require a weed barrier material that's laid down. All overhead irrigation must be capped, removed, or converted to drip system. So again, no overhead irrigation, and additional hand watering may be needed during plant establishment. So we do allow hand watering, but again, very important, no overhead irrigation is allowed in the project. Let's see, and the third one I have on this page, all weed barrier material and exposed soil must be covered with at least 3 inches of mulch. So we don't want to see any bare soil. We do want to see that mulch coverage throughout the project. Okay, next, as you guys already heard tonight, we do need to include a rain capture technique such as a rain garden, a rain barrel cistern, infiltration trench, vegetated swale, berm, dry riverbed, grade or retention pond. All of these again to capture the rainwater, prevent runoff into the street, into the sewer, put the rainwater back into the ground. All sustainable features that we love to see, and they're beautiful features in these projects. So make sure that there is a sustainable rain capture feature in the project. And as you can see, there is the rain barrel or cistern, and that does qualify for the rain capture feature. So definitely if they are participating in the turf replacement program and they get a rain barrel or cistern, that also qualifies for a rebate as well. So win-win there. Another point that's very important is projects are allowed a maximum of 25% of the project area to be covered with non-vegetative material. So that's hardscape. So that's your pavers, your gravel, your decomposed granite, or your decorative rocks, boulders, sand, any kind of hardscape. You are only allowed a maximum of 25% of the project area. And this also includes if your rain capture does have boulders or gravel or something, that is part of your maximum 25%. Okay, and also the last one on here, your front and your backyard projects must include 3 plants per every 100 square feet. We do recommend the native, drought tolerant, and California friendly plants. So make sure that again, you do include enough plants in your project. Okay, so we do also allow customers to convert their parkway area. And that again is the area of between the street and the sidewalk that is typically planted or landscaped. Some customers don't have that defined with the sidewalk, but usually most people do. And so that's your parkway area. We do have a little bit more requirements for this area. We kind of follow in line with street services, the city of LA, just to make sure we're following their rules and for pedestrian safety. So for the parkway, plants and mulch are allowed only. So unfortunately, there can be no hardscape allowed in the parkway, which sometimes customers do want to put all decomposed granites or pavers just so that they don't have to water, but unfortunately no hardscape. So we only want to see plants and mulch in the parkway area. Plants must be drought tolerant and native to California and must cover the parkway at 80% full coverage at maturity. So pretty much when all the plants are fully grown, it should cover majority of the parkway. So 80% plant coverage at full maturity. And you can also use the low growing ground cover as well in the parkway. Another requirement is that the plants must be lower than 36 inches in height at full maturity. Okay. Also, just want to make sure we have that in red. Commercial property, so very important. You do need to obtain a permit from street services if you're going to be redoing your parkway for this project. And at our website at ladwp.com/PW, we do have the full parkway guidelines. Okay, so what is not allowed in the parkway? So again, we do have a little bit more for the parkway. We just want to make sure that customers do their parkway correctly and able to get their full refund. So not allowed in the parkway, turf or turf looking grasses aren't allowed. Plants with spines or thorns. We don't want anything pokey in there that can hurt pedestrians walking by. Plants that are poisonous or invasive. We don't want to see that as well. We don't allow vegetable or fruit gardens in the parkway. And again, no non-vegetative materials. So that means your gravel, your decomposed granites, any kind of pavers, and also synthetic or artificial turf is not allowed in the project area. Okay, so I'm going to go over applying for the turf program. So if you as the contractor or your customer will be applying, this helps go over the process. So very important, pre-approval is required before starting projects. We have customers, start their projects, remove their grass, and others that have done their project and try to request the rebate. And unfortunately, they didn't get their pre-approval. So very important, get your pre-approval. Before applying, you will need pictures. So pre-pictures, what we call them. And you'll need a minimum of 5 pictures of the proposed project area, showing the front of the house and the front yard and all the project areas. On the website, it does give you examples of how we want the pictures, but just keep in mind, we're using these pictures to kind of see your project area. So just make sure that we can see the whole entire area and we have your proposed area that we can kind of see. You will need the first full page of your LADWP water bill. We do want to verify that you are a LADWP customer, and also a landscape plan or drawing. It says right there, nothing fancy is needed. And include your project area measurements. So just like on the picture, it can be very simple. It doesn't have to be full architectural drawings. They can be, I've seen some colored in color pencils and crayons. And so just a simple drawing that has your house and your project area, your front yard or your parkway, where your proposed rain capture is going to be, along with where the plants are, where you're going to be removing turf, just so we can have an idea of what you plan on doing in your project. And so all those 3 are needed for the pre-approval. And so go to SoCalWatersmart.com to apply. This is the website that you apply for the turf and also for all the other water conservation rebates. You'll be able to pick residential or commercial. So depending on what type of client you have. You submit your application directly online. You do need to register with your email and create a password because you will be going back on this website and uploading documents later on. So for your basic information, you're going to need your name, your client's name, address, email, phone number, and also account number. And for your project information, this is some of the information that you're going to need to apply, such as the project address, the property type, your lot size, your current irrigation type, because again, remember, we do need to know if you have overhead irrigation, that you'll be removing that overhead irrigation. We're going to need the square footage of all the project areas. Do keep in mind that you'll need the different square footage of the front yard, backyard, and parkway if you're doing separate areas, and then they get totaled up. So definitely have good square footage and measurements of the project area. And also we need to know what rain capture technique that you're going to be using in the project. Okay, so after all of that has been entered, make sure you submit your application. Please be sure to read the terms and condition, because that's very important. Watch the sustainable landscape videos offered by MWD to select your rain capture feature. E-sign the application and then save and submit. And that's a picture of what you should see. And very important, once you do click save and submit, you'll get a notification notifying you that you have submitted your application, and you'll get an application number. Please keep in mind that this is not a pre-approval yet. It's going to be reviewed. It does take about 1 to 2 weeks for them to go over. They're going to be looking at your pictures. They're going to be looking at your site plan. They will email you if you are missing any kind of information. So say if they needed more pictures or they weren't sure about your measurements, they'll let you know. But again, this is not your pre-approval yet. This is just an application number that they did receive your application. So definitely don't start removing your grass. Don't start your project yet. Wait until you do get that pre-approval email, which you will see on the next screen. So this is kind of what it looks like, your pre-approval. It will say turf reservation application has been approved. So that's the go ahead for you to go and start your project. So definitely look for this pre-approval email, and it will say you'll have 180 days to complete your project. So that's when you can start. But don't forget, please, we do ask that you do read through the terms and conditions, especially on this pre-approval email that you do get, because it does specify going over what LADWP, what I just briefly covered, what we do require, such as the rain capture feature, our hardscape 25%, our 3 plants per maximum, going over the parkway as well. So we just want to make sure that you do complete the project correctly. And you can see on the red, if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at waterconservation@ladwp.com if you're curious about any kind of how to do the project or what's allowed and what's not allowed. So definitely once you get your pre-approval, go ahead and start your project. Okay, and so once you're finished before the 180 days, go back online to the account that you created at SoCalWatersmart.com. Make sure you sign in and update your application. You do need to upload the newest first page of your LADWP bill. And you do need to upload a minimum of 5 new pictures. So we do need to see your post pictures. We're gonna already have your pre photos, and then we need to see your post photos of what your project was when it's completed. And also be sure to include a picture of your rain capture feature, because that is a requirement. And click save and submit. So if your project has met all the terms and conditions, as long as you got everything in there and it looks great, it takes about 2 to 4 weeks for your rebate to be approved. We go through it and look through your pictures. You might get a site visit, but other than that, it takes about 2 to 4 weeks. And once it is approved, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks from the approval to actually receive your rebate check in the mail. And that's pretty much the process of the turf replacement program. And yeah, that's my last slide. So contact information. So if you do have any questions about the rebates or the turf replacement program, you can email us at waterconservation@ladwp.com. We also have our hotline number that we can also speak to you in person. We do have the SoCal Water Smart webpage, and their hotline number on the bottom there. If you or your customer is inquiring about maybe the status of their application or where their rebate check is, or if they actually need help with the application, you can contact SoCal Water Smart directly at their hotline number or email. Actually, it's not there, but so you can call the hotline number and they can assist you with that as well. And that's it. So thank you very much. You can email me directly as well, or any of our water conservation specialists in our group can assist you with any questions. So hopefully that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Cassian. We really appreciate it. There were a couple of questions in the chat, but I'm wondering if it's most appropriate to ask here or if it's better to email it to you. One of the questions involved whether or not milkweed is considered toxic for planting in a parkway. Is that something off the top of your head you know how to answer, or is that something that is best put in an email?
Probably best put an email. I don't know offhand, but I can ask around milkweed. Yeah, I'm not sure if that would be considered a poisonous plant, but yeah, if you could email us
Okay.
with that question, yeah, we'll get back.
So water conservation at LADWP folks would be great. And this is just for the city of LA, not county. Is that correct, Cassian?
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah, customer of the city of Los Angeles, Department of Water and Power. Mhm.
All right. And then another question referred to a limit on edibles or kind of, vegetable growing for a commercial or residential rebate program, because let's see, maybe that's a better email question.
Yeah, that's always kind of a great, you guys got some great questions there tonight. That's a kind of gray area. Definitely not allowed in the parkway, but in your project, I think we said, but definitely we can go back and forth. They don't have a defined percentage for edible gardens, just because sometimes they do use a little bit more water than the drought tolerant plants. So yes, we can go back and forth and talk about it if a specific customer does want to put vegetable gardens or planters sometimes. There's a percentage, I think we said about 25%, but the whole thing can't be a vegetable edible garden.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk often about mixing and matching and doing, native plants and then also having some veggie gardening. I think ultimately, big picture, anytime you're kind of insourcing your own food production, that reduces how much gas transport and all sorts of stuff happens. So I think it's a positive sustainability step, but I agree, water savings wise, it's not always good. So if there's a kind of way to to make some allowances for that, I think it's a good thing. All right, cool. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. So Cassian, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming here.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, and you're welcome to stop your share. And anybody who has other questions can email waterconservation@ladwp.com, one of those.
Yes, .com.
.com.
Thank you.
So thank you guys for coming for this class. We're gonna end up leaving a little early. This is kind of nice, guys. You have an extra half hour to watch a show, or I don't know what you guys do in the evening. But we will rejoin on, what is today? Today's Tuesday, on Friday, and Friday is going to be about integrated pest management, and we're going to talk about like weeds and pests and bugs and stuff like that. So that's going to be a pretty fun one. After that is going to be pruning, which I also think is a fun one. And then after that's like the final class, and then our final workshop, and then that's it. So we've passed the halfway mark for this course. Give yourselves a round of applause for making it this far. And we look forward to seeing you in a few days. Have a good night, everyone.